But that's the cool thing about being a curator. You don't have to be the expert. You don't have to keep coming up with stuff to share. You can select the right people and ask the right questions. And like, it's kind of like the least preparation, but you've kind of had to build the relationships for a long time. Welcome to this video in our show host series. As promised, this video, we are continuing on talking about the 3 different kinds of personal brand show hosts. And last video, we talked about the expert, which is the most common, but today we're talking about the curator show host for personal brands. And this is actually the rarest. Maybe only like 10% of personal brand show hosts are really actually well suited naturally to being a curator. So let's talk about what it is. And if you are a curator show host, we will talk about how to play to your strengths and what to avoid and what to lean into. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, we have a free quiz that you can take. The link is below in the video. It takes 30 seconds, and it will help you self-identify what type of show host you naturally are. At Birthful Media, we make podcasts and YouTube shows for personal brands who are pretty seasoned. Most of our clients work in self-development, health and wellness, and entrepreneurship. So pretty niche, but we know what we're talking about in that niche. So we made the show host quiz because we want you to be able to self-identify and start getting really tailored, specific advice for you. And in this video, we're covering how to be a really good curator type show host. So we have experts, we have curators, and we have mavens. And this video is going to be all about the curator. Let me give you a little bit of background about why I know so much about this type of show host. I started my career in podcast and YouTube production way back in 2014. And the first show I ever worked on, which I was working on for years, was a big self-development show that's now pretty well known, with a host who lived in Los Angeles and had a studio in his home and kind of is considered like the leader for this type of show. You've probably seen the show. It's called The School of Greatness. And so that experience of learning how to produce a curator type show where all that host did really was interview guests, really interesting people, that gave me a huge education as to what a really good curator type show host does and what they shouldn't do and what works and what doesn't. So I produced like hundreds of these episodes over the years that I worked on that show. And since then, with Birthful Media and with all the different clients we work with, this is the rarest type of show host as far as like someone playing to their natural strengths. But I actually have a lot of experience with it because that's what I did for like 4 years. So let's talk about the curator show host. This is a person who has like a deep, rich network within their industry. Like they just know a ton of people and it's really easy for them to network. That plays to their natural strengths. They're just kind of that person who knows everyone. That's a curator. Now they also have another really important skill that is they're a super good listener. And you may have noticed this if you watch interview style shows and podcasts. Like there's a big difference between a show host who's like listening just to ask the next question or wants to say a bunch of their own words in response, and someone who's actually a really good listener and doesn't need to say a lot in response and ask the questions that everyone has on the tip of their mind as they're listening. That's a really good curator. They don't need to be the center of attention. They're really good at being present, listening, and asking the right questions. They talk like 10% of the time, and they let their guest be the focus of like 90% of the episode. So as you can tell, as I'm describing this, it's pretty rare because most people, like, that's not their natural strength. Most people are really good at talking about what they know, and that's an expert show host, and they're better suited to solo episodes. But curators don't have to be an expert in what they do. They need to be really good listeners. They need to have a really rich, deep network, and they need to know how to, work with people. So they have high emotional intelligence, high social intelligence. They are really good at making people feel comfortable around them. They're able to bring people into a room and get them to feel safe and open up and, share their best stories, share their best wisdom. And that's a talent and a skill. And it takes a long time for most people to develop this talent and skill, even if you're naturally good at it. And that's why for most show hosts of personal brand type shows, like it makes way more sense for them to focus on other kinds of content, because to become good as a curator type show host, is like a journey for most people. And for a lot of people, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would you do that if you're so much better at something else? So let's talk about, if you are this special, rare type of show host, like what should you lean into and how should you kind of format your show and what will bring a really good return on investment? So the big thing to remember if you're a curator is play to your super strengths, use your emotional intelligence, invite people from your network on your show, do everything you kind of naturally understand about making people feel comfortable and empathizing and asking interesting questions. But, and here's the big pitfall for a lot of people, if you just invite everyone and their dog on your show because they're interesting or famous or trending, that's where things can go south. Because as you've probably noticed, if you're already a show host and you have an interview style show, most people are not actually very experienced being interviewed and speaking well on camera or on microphone. Like, most people don't have that skill in their back pocket. And so it really pays, if you're a curator show host who's doing an interview style show, to only invite people on who you know have either a lot of media experience, plenty of public speaking experience, plenty of interview experience, or that you have such a good rapport and enough relationship that you can really build off of a strong foundation already. And you know what I'm talking about if you've listened to a lot of podcasts or YouTube shows in this world of interview style. It is so clear really quick whether or not the host and the guest have a good relationship, whether or not the vibe is good, whether or not the guest feels comfortable and confident speaking. So if you are the curator show host, which is the rare specialty, it's super important to pick your guests very thoughtfully and carefully and really be the steward, be the shepherd of your show, because your audience is counting on you to cultivate really good guests and not just invite everyone on to fill a slot. That's how you lose people. Okay, that's tip number one if you're a curator show host. Tip number two is, as far as format and what kind of show, how often should you have episodes, whether you should do audio and video, you kind of have the most bandwidth to play with, because you'll do just as well on audio as you will on video. And the more production value you can invest in, the better. Obviously, you don't have to go the whole 9 yards and come to a studio and have a full crew. But if you can, it will go worlds and worlds farther. You know what I'm talking about. All the clips you've seen on social media that were cut from filmed interviews in studio with cool people. That stuff goes viral. Obviously, you've seen it. So if you can put that into your budget, amazing. It will pay dividends for a long time. If you just want to start with an audio show that you remotely record where you're at your house and your guest is somewhere else, that is fine to start there. You'll kind of need to do a little extra work to make sure that your, connection and the vibe is right. But that is okay to start. You can kind of move between the mediums really well. You can do a seasonal show where you do, 10, 20 episodes and then take a break. You can do an always on show if you have enough guests to invite on, and you can, that's kind of more about your bandwidth and your network than anything. So as far as the format, there's a lot of things that work. It's important to just actually choose a sustainable format and schedule. But that's the cool thing about being a curator. You don't have to be the expert. You don't have to keep coming up with stuff to share. You can select the right people and ask the right questions, and it's kind of the least preparation, but you've kind of had to build the relationships for a long time. So you could think of it as a different kind of preparation to be a good curator show host. All right, we'll wrap it there for today on this video for curator show hosts. If you haven't taken the quiz yet, go ahead and take it. You'll find out what type of show host you are if you're a personal brand. And then you'll get a really great email follow-up written by me with case studies and examples and sort of more tips and advice about how to make a really great show for your natural show host type. Obviously, subscribe to the channel. We're going to post videos weekly this year on our show host series to help you become a better show host. And we'll see you in the next video.